You're listening to Inside the Village, where all news is local and no topic is off limits.
So help me, Bob, it's bully in the alley. Hey, bully in the alley. So help me, Bob.
Welcome back to Inside the Village across the Village Media Network or wherever you get your favorite podcast for Friday, May 17th, 2024. I'm Scott Sexsmith alongside my good friend Michael Friscolanti, editor-in-chief here at Village Media. The show each and every week produced by Derek Turner. He is also in the room. Good to have everybody back. Got an email from you this week. Normally, I don't get an email or a text unless you need something from me.
I know you got the ask email.
I did get the so talk to us about that.
Yeah, a lot of people, all of our newsletter subscribers would have from all our sites would have received an email from me, just talking about the journalism we do, why we do it, and asking them to support us. We do. Are firmly committed to having reporters on the ground in our communities, journalists who live and work in the communities that we serve, and it's a tough one to write sometimes, Scott, because you are literally putting your hand out and asking people to contribute. We are a free website. Our websites are 100% free, always will be. Access, we want them to be free and quick access to the news that's happening in their community. But we do ask people who have a little bit extra and can invest in the journalism we're doing to give a few bucks a month, and that's what I did. And it's about the fourth or fifth one that I've written since I've been here. And they are a challenge. I am a writer by trade. It's what I do, but I've never written and asked people for money. But I hope they come across as trying to show people why the work we do is so important. And if you want to help us out, it would be much appreciated. And maybe the next time that you do this, I'll be a little better prepared, because I know that we get a lot of positive feedback from readers, which is wonderful, but we also get some very creative responses. Yes.
Some likely not meant to be aired, but you know what? We'll give it a whirl. So the next time you do one, we will certainly...
One was from scottsexsmith@gmail.com or something.
That email does not exist.
I noticed on the spreadsheet there was no subscription from you.
No, I
you work here. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say.
You do enough? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I didn't want to say I do enough, but I contribute in other meaningful ways.
That's for sure.
All right. Enough about my wallet and what's not in it. Let's move ahead to the first word to Frisco. You talk about great reporting, and certainly none better than Charlie Pinkerton at the Trillium, part of our Queen's Park team there. And he covered recently 3 wild days in the town of Brighton.
Yeah, we talk a lot about the Trillium on this show, and I think I mentioned the fact that they were nominated for multiple awards this award season in journalism, a National Newspaper Award, award from the Canadian Journalism Foundation for the investigative work they do. A lot of it linked to the Greenbelt and developers' influence on Ontario politics. And this was just, I don't want to say funny, but it is a funny story.
Yeah.
The municipality of Brighton, in open council, talks about how they're hiring a consultant or a lobbyist
lobbying firm,
and they one of them openly says it's because we need someone who has a backdoor access to the Ford government, right? And of course the lobbyist is like, whoa, no, that's not me. So he canceled the contract. So there's kind of a wild 3 days unfolding in Brighton, and then Charlie jumped on it. It did come out of a local newsletter that's published there, which again, kudos to local journalism and local news. And then the story blew up from there, and Charlie jumped on and covered it. It's just a crazy story.
You got to love the straightforwardness and the honesty, right? You talk about transparency in politics. That was transparent. But then Housing Minister Paul Calandra jumped in and said, look, if that's the end game, don't even bother.
Don't bother paying these high-power lobbyists. But it's interesting. And the NDP did a beautiful job of spinning it, saying, well, this is the perception that communities have, is that the only way you can get to the Ford government is if you have a backdoor lobbyist who has that back entrance to the government's ear. It was funny. I mean, it was one of those stories. It was almost too good to believe.
Yeah.
But crazy. Just people openly saying, well, we needed someone. We don't want someone who goes and follows the rules and goes through the front door. We need someone who's going to go through the front door.
Who needs rules?
Yeah.
All right. To the city of Orillia we go, and a Christmas tree made famous by Jimmy Fallon has sadly met its maker.
Yeah. Tyler Evans in Orillia did a beautiful piece. And again, I don't live in Orillia, but I know from our great site there, this tree meant a lot to the community. It was outside the Opera House. It was sick. It had some disease, and it had to be pulled down. And it kind of reminded me of our issue here with the Muyo sign, right? People kind of gathered around to watch this kind of landmark in the community meet its end, and the cranes are in there pulling it down. And you're right, part of the news story reflected the fact that this tree was made famous in that Jimmy Fallon where they made fun of it because it didn't really light up the way it was supposed to. So kind of a sad ending for the tree, but hey, things change, Scott.
They certainly do. And finally, to one of our crack reporters, Karen Nickerson, based out of Flamborough today, who single-handedly could be solving the housing crisis in the province of Ontario.
Do I say it all the time? This is my favorite story, but I think I do. But it is one of my favorite stories. So some of our communities have been, saying, well, look, it's real estate season. It's springtime. A lot of people are looking at buying houses like they always do. What can you get for your money these days? And a couple of our sites have gone and said, what's the cheapest house that I can buy in my community? So I suggested that to the team in Flamborough. So Kara went looking in Flamborough, which is part of Hamilton. And the cheapest home there is on a nudist resort.
Yes.
So there's
the Ponderosa Nature Resort.
The Ponderosa Nature Resort, right? So I broke out again laughing. I said, I guess I think everything's funny. Maybe I shouldn't think everything's so funny. This is a serious business we're in, Scott. And it was just a fantastic story. So she went and told us why this house is so cheap, where it is, what the rules are. And she also found that there's a whole bunch of other cheap housing in that resort. Kara
and I actually filmed a behind-the-scenes segment based on that. And as any good reporter will do, you'll do your research. So I went on their website at the Ponderosa Nature Resort, and then I thought, geez, I better tell the boss, just in case, he's tracking the websites that we're on, why I was on a nudist resort's website. Interesting read, let me tell you.
It was great.
All right, the first word to Frisco. Coming up today on the program, Jeff Horncastle is going to be joining us. Jeff is from the Canadian Anti-Fraud Center, and man, oh man, fraud in this country, email, text, phone, it is out of control.
It's everywhere, and I've often said we kind of live in a fraud society now. We have to assume that everything's a fraud, and I'm really excited about this conversation because it's something we talk about all the time.
Yeah.
And he's going to give us some help on giving some people some advice on how to watch out for this stuff, but just to give us a sense of the scale of how bad it is.
All right, Jeff Horncastle from the Canadian Anti-Fraud Center joins us next when Inside the Village returns right after this.
Reporters, editors, and journalists who go the extra mile to get the story and get it right. Go behind the scenes with those who cover the stories that matter most to you and your community. Look for it in the Village Features section of your favorite Village Media website across Ontario.
I was drowning in debt, feeling hopeless. Then Ontario-wide Financial turned my life around. Ontario-wide cleaned up my credit and gave me the help I needed. Now I'm starting fresh. Don't wait. Your fresh start is just a call away.
Welcome back to Inside the Village with Michael Friscolanti, editor-in-chief here at Village Media. I'm Scott Sexsmith. Scams are on the rise in Canada, and we are pleased to have with us from the Canadian Anti-Fraud Center, Jeff Horncastle. Jeff, welcome to Inside the Village. We appreciate your time today.
Hey guys, really happy to be here.
Okay, so before we get into the nuts and bolts of it, Jeff, maybe you can tell us a little bit about the Canadian Anti-Fraud Center and what you folks do.
Basically, the Canadian Anti-Fraud Center collects information related to fraud. Central repository for mass marketing fraud in Canada. So part of our mandate is to collect that information, share it with Canadians to protect them from, educate them, share the prevention messaging alerts through our social media channels, on our website. On top of this, what we do is we share the information with law enforcement partners, government agencies, not only in Canada, but across the world to support investigations.
Mm-hmm. Jeff, how do we know that this isn't a fraud, that you're the real guy?
Are you the real Jeff Horncastle?
How do we even know these days?
Yeah, I know. I mean, you know what? And that's a great point. It could be a deep fake video, right? We don't know anymore.
We get that all the time. I think all our videos are deep fake.
How do you think we get 12 weeks holidays?
I know, it's crazy.
It's a great lead-in, Jeff, and we may dig into this later, but let's talk about AI and the role that that's playing in all of these scams.
Yeah, do you know what? There's so much discussion about AI, so many different ways that it can be used, and unfortunately, we're only at the beginning of, it's recently emerged technology. So like we were just talking about deepfake, we laughed about it, but I think we've all come across a video that seemed kind of choppy. Sometimes it's hard to tell, right? Yeah. If the video we're seeing of a celebrity promoting an investment platform or merchandise on social media, is that real or not? So do you know what? We're kind of in a situation where you have to prove that it's real. So you know what? Don't assume everything is real. Always go dig in. Other forms of AI are generative AI. So, you get a text message offering you a job. This is could be a sophisticated bot on the other end where you reply and there's like automated responses that are coming back, which is another form of AI It could be used for data analysis before they go in for a spear phishing attack through, to victimize a business. So a bunch of different ways the AI can be used. At the end of the day, prevention methods don't really change. You always kind of have to be your own investigator.
Jeff, you mentioned a job offer, and about 10 minutes before we walked in studio, and I know this is going to look like it's
it's fake.
It's fake, but this legit happened. I got a text message from a number that I didn't recognize, and the message reads, "Hi, if you have a moment to spare, I have a great job prospect that I'd like to share with you. Let's connect and discuss further." Now, right. I know enough to just delete this and report it as junk. What happens, though, to people that, respond and engage? What's the next step in this scam?
So the problem is that, job fraudsters or criminals that target people that typically would post their resume online. Anybody that provides their contact information, then they're kind of at risk to be targeted, right? Now, like I was talking about with automation and AI, they can target so many people at once, and they're basically waiting for you to answer. So if you were to answer, what they would do is they would more than likely down the road, a few messages in, ask you to go to a different communication method, an encrypted communication method like WhatsApp or Telegram, possibly, and that's where they would introduce you to this website where you can make money. And basically, it would be where they would claim to offer you a position to boost apps or games or merchandise or whatever the case may be. And if the victim agrees to do so, on top of providing possibly fake reviews on merchandise or apps, they think that they're making money. They see their money growing on this website, and then down the road, in order to make a little bit more money, they're asked to put in a bit of their own money to move up a level. So they put in a bit of their money into this crypto wallet, and very well done, very sophisticated, very legitimate looking websites. So it kind of turns into an investment scam / job scam.
Yeah. That is crazy. To be clear, I got this job from a random phone call. So and sometimes they're real.
Well, when I got this, I thought, okay, this isn't NBC Universal offering me my dream gig at the Golf Channel.
No, that's not it. I'm just kidding. Right. We've talked about this a lot. It does feel like we just live in a fraud world now, right? And I hope you can maybe speak a little bit to Jeff to the point of how bad this has gotten over the last few years. I feel like we have to be wary of everything we see now. Any phone call we get, any email we get, anyone we meet on the street. We had a story in one of our in Cambridge, one of our sites last year, a person posting saying that they found someone had lost their cat, and they reached out to them and said, "Oh, I have your cat. I found your cat," but it was all a scam. So they literally, it was what kind of person do you have to be? Anyways, It's a long question, but how bad has the problem gotten in the last few years?
Yeah. So first of all, let's look at the numbers, and let's keep in mind that we estimate that only 5 to 10% of victims actually report to the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre. So overall dollar loss reported to the CAFC in 2023 was $570 million. Wow. So let's say, that can be multiplied by 10 or 20 even, right? In reality. Unfortunately, it looks like we're on pace to meet that number again in 2024 based on the first 4 months, 190 million lost. So, in comparison, if we're going back here, comparing to 2021, where there was 387 million lost, and even 2020, 165 million lost. So it's getting worse.
It's big business.
It's big business, yeah.
It is, and you know what? Back in March was Fraud Prevention Month. Our theme for the month was the 20th anniversary. So what we focus on was how has fraud changed? How has fraud evolved? Well, you know what? The number one thing that we looked at, or one of the top factors, was the emergence of social media, right? Whether we're looking at compromised accounts, fake advertisements on social media. It just created a brand new ripe environment on top of, caller ID spoofing, new technology that had emerged within the last, 5-10 years, search engine optimization. So we really have to look at the methods that fraudsters are using, because there's so many different types of fraud out there, right, that it's kind of hard to remember how every type of fraud works.
Jeff, that caller ID spoofing that you mentioned, is that when a number comes up that appears to be a local number? Is that what that is?
That could be one of the variations, or you got a call claiming to be, let's say, the Canada Revenue Agency. Well, they have the ability to make that legitimate number show up on your call display. Mm-hmm. So, in other words, you don't have, if you're getting an incoming call, you can't prove or confirm 100% that you're speaking with the legitimate organization or company or whatever the case may be. So you always want to make sure you're making that outgoing call.
Yeah, you can see how that can work, right? Scott mentioned the word industry. It does feel like it's an industry. Do you have any idea of like how many people are actually in the fraud industry? Like, it must be people all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I mean, fraud, there's no borders, right? A lot of these phone calls or emails, text messages, communications on social media aren't necessarily coming from within Canada. Can't really put a number on it, but we know it's massive.
Yeah. I've always wished I could grill a guy who does this, right? Like, how do you have the personality to know that you're ripping off some old lady in small town Ontario?
Yeah, how do you?
Have you ever had the chance to go to a conference where you spoke to someone who's actually did this for a living?
Unfortunately not. But it definitely takes. It's a horrible experience for the victim. You know, fraud can affect anyone differently. Even if the victim hasn't necessarily lost money, if they're a victim of identity fraud, it can affect you emotionally, can affect you psychologically, right? So,
I just don't know how you sleep at night if you know if you do that, like you do that for your livings, quote unquote. And so, what are some of the worst ones that are out there right now? We talked about phishing scams, the grandparent scam. Which one is really on the loose right now?
Yeah, so we can look at it based on dollar loss, 2023 investment scams. So largely due to crypto investments. So, to begin with, Canadians generally more than likely don't have very much knowledge on the subject. Fairly new. So what happens is a victim goes on to, let's say, Google, looks up crypto investment. Chances are search engine optimization is being utilized. The first 5 to 10 results that come up are more than likely fraudulent cryptocurrency investment platforms. 315 million was lost to investment scams in 2023. Another big one is we touched on it a bit, are the job scams, and the variation that we talked about is one of the main contributing factors because I mentioned the victim eventually putting their own money in. Well, what happens is if they do put let's say $1,000 or $2,000 in, they don't want to believe that they've lost that money, so they're going to continue trying to put that money in until they're able to withdraw the funds. Unfortunately, in the end, they're not, right? Emergency grandparent scam is another big one. Bank investigator. So many different types of service scams out there, whether it's air duct cleaning, tech support, which has been around for many years, is still out there as well. Could be a phone call claiming to be your cell phone service provider, offering you, a brand new iPhone with a $40 a month deal. What they're looking for is their personal information to be able to order a new cell phone with your identity. So, like I mentioned, we document over 30 types of fraud at the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre. Very, very challenging to remember how every single type of fraud works. I think what we have to focus on is, what kind of technology are fraudsters using?
Jeff, in a lot of these cases, there's a sense of urgency to the scam, right? Respond now. You've got an overdue payment. We need action now. I guess the first key is to kind of step back, take a deep breath, and not knee-jerk react right away and answer the question. Is that the case?
Yeah, very common across the board. You're exactly right. There's always a sense of urgency, whether there's some kind of threat or you're seeing an ad for merchandise online. You have to act now, or you're going to miss out on the 70% off deal type thing, right? So, sense of urgency is very common. Take a step back. You can save yourself from being a victim, whether you're getting an email, looks legitimate. Always take the time and, take a day if you have to. Reach out to a family member, loved one for advice. Contact the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre if you have to.
Jeff, does the Anti-Fraud Centre have any position on the punishments for these crimes? We've seen recently there have been some people in Canada arrested for the grandparent scam. A major bust by the OPP, I believe, last month, where they arrested people in connection with a few $100,000 worth of grandparent scams. Do you have a position on whether the penalty for being convicted of these kind of frauds is high enough?
It's not something that I would really be able to touch on too much, although we do support investigations. We don't conduct investigations, right? So I think that would be a better question, more suited for local police.
For sure. And in terms of advice, like Scott had mentioned for people, what are the other, because you're right, you can't just educate people on every detail of how every scam works and be on the lookout. No one's going to be able to process all that. So what are some other key pieces of advice to people who are listening today to take into consideration to not become a victim?
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to reiterate what Scott touched on, that sense of urgency, taking a step back, doing as much research as you can, whether, if you're considering investing into cryptocurrency, reach out to the Ontario Securities Commission. If you're in Ontario, do research online. Remember that some reviews can be fake for whatever, if it's merchandise or crypto or whatever the case may be. Always take as much time as you need and get a second opinion. We see that, with phishing, for example, victimization happens very quickly where, a person in most cases realizes right after they clicked on the link or downloaded an attachment or provided personal information that something was wrong. Right. So, taking that step back can go such a long way.
So, Jeff, you're knee deep in this. This is your world that you live in. Can you tell us one or two of the craziest scams that you've come across or the craziest stories you've documented?
You know what? They're,
you don't even know anymore which ones are crazy.
There's
right?
so many. But you know what? I think from what we're seeing, like I kind of touched on, being a victim to fraud affects everybody differently. So, if one person, is a victim of identity fraud, that can affect a person just as much as losing $100,000, for example, right? Depending on what kind of situation they're in. A lot of our messaging includes messaging on romance fraud, because romance fraud can, last for years sometimes, right? Yes. So it's something that we really push prevention messaging on, what to watch for, and, essentially, without getting into all the details and all the tips, the main one is to never send money to someone you've never met in person.
Yeah. Real quick, Jeff, sorry. Do you ever answer these scam calls sometimes just for fun and to go after the guy who calls you?
You know what? As much as I'd like to, we always advise not to. Just because you never know, right? Yeah. A lot of these calls are organized, or done by organized crime. So, if you rub them the wrong way, for example, they might call you nonstop.
Yeah, decide to target you a different way.
Or worse.
Yeah, or worse.
Yeah. Jeff, if people want to reach out to the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre to report something, what's the best and easiest way for them to do so?
So the best and easiest way, there are two ways to report. You can do it through our website, through our fraud reporting system. Our website is antifraudcenter.ca, or you can call our toll-free line at 1-888-495-8501.
All right, good stuff. We'll flash that number and website on screen. Jeff Horncastle from the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre. Important conversation. Jeff, appreciate you doing this today.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Last year, financial stress had me at my wit's end. I felt trapped and embarrassed that it had gotten so bad. I really felt I had nowhere to turn. That's when I called Ontario-wide Financial. Their home equity lending was a game changer for me. Despite my bad credit and being in a consumer proposal, they helped me get the cash I needed. Thanks to Ontario-wide Financial, I've started this year with hope, not stress. They gave me a fresh start, and they can do the same for you. Ontario-wide Financial, because everyone deserves a second chance.
Reporters, editors, and journalists who go the extra mile to get the story and get it right. Go behind the scenes with those who cover the stories that matter most to you and your community. Look for it in the Village Features section of your favorite Village Media website across Ontario.
Back to wrap on Inside the Village. He was good, smart guy.
Well, that was a great conversation.
Yeah.
I told you before it started I was looking forward to that conversation.
Well, and Derek and I talked about this earlier. This is the kind of topic that affects everyone.
Yeah, all day.
All ages, all day long, every day. I mean, it's almost a daily occurrence now, or multiple times a day, that you get those robocalls or text messages or,
The grandparent scam one still boggles my mind.
Yeah.
Right? Because it is, as the editor of these sites, I see it on our sites all the time.
Yep.
So local police are talking about this. They're arresting people. They're warning people. The OPP, like I said last month, had a huge bust. I can't remember the dollar. It was a few $100,000 they arrested people. And these are local people because they actually have to go meet the person and pick up the cash or whatever it is, right? And it boggles my mind. And then I did hear from someone I know that their grandmother was out of like $9,000 or something.
It's brutal, man.
And it's so, I guess, if you get called out of the blue like that and you panic and you're worried about your grandkid, I guess, you would react that way. But I don't understand how you do that. How do you say, okay, here's what I'm going to do with my life. Oh, I'm going to rip this old lady off for $9,000.
And more so, how hard do you have to work, to make this scam? I mean, the thinking
I know.
and the detail. Just go and get a job, man.
I know,
it's so
go to
much
school.
easier.
I know. It doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, I guess it's easy money if you can land that big payday, I guess. But I assume, and I'm going way beyond my expertise, but I assume if there is an organized crime factor to this, you're not keeping all that money for yourself. It's trickling to all different people along the chain.
Yeah.
We'll have to get Antonio Horncastle back on to talk about
It's funny. I'm rewatching The Sopranos right now.
The best show.
So I'm learning all about payouts to the capos.
I've watched it twice. It's the best show. Man.
It's phenomenal.
There are some episodes of that show that are just pieces of art.
Yeah. Ending, brutal. But that's...
I think the ending was good.
Did you really?
I liked the ending. Well, I don't know. I don't want to spoil it if people didn't see it, but I thought it was perfect.
Really?
Yeah, I really liked it. Because... Well, are we allowed to talk about the ending? Because what if people haven't
Why not?
seen it? Well, you know what? Let's see if someone calls to complain.
Okay, Derek, have you seen The Sopranos?
Oh, yeah.
All right, Derek's seen it. We can talk about it.
For sure, Tony gets whacked at the end.
That's what you think,
For
right?
sure he gets whacked.
Yeah.
So, but they just didn't want to show it.
Every time I hear Journey's Don't Stop Believing, I want to throw my hands up in the air and say, what the hell?
I know. I didn't see the prequel, though, that he put out. Did you ever watch it?
No, I did not.
I haven't seen it.
I did not.
Was it good?
It was good?
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, that's his son, who plays him.
Yeah.
It's crazy, yeah.
Just back to Jeff for a sec. You talked about the romance.
how did we get
I don't know. How did we get down this rabbit hole? The romance scams. Remember the woman in Barrie?
Yes.
Who ended up in was it a Hong Kong prison?
Yeah, her second romance scam. She was scammed twice. Yeah. And that's what, it's easy for us to say, how do you get scammed by that? You're whatever. But it's just...
Really? Because I never thought that.
It is.
Fool me once? What's that? Fool me once?
Yeah. But if he's saying it's $500 million and that's 5% of what's actually reported...
5 to 10%
I mean, you can see
reported,
it's obviously working quite well. It's quite an industry, as you phrased it.
Yeah. Crazy. All right. That's a wrap.
You want to give your money to somebody? Support local journalism.
Yeah. You'll never get ripped off. You'll get more than you ever bargained for.
And you know what? If you actually got to this point in the show and you're listening to this part, send us an email. I want to know if you got to this part of the show. I want to do some stats.
Do you?
Yeah.
What if nobody responds?
Well, then we'll know that nobody listened.
We should scroll like a support number. You know how is it PBS or TVO that does that?
Yeah. If you get to the end of the show and you call this number, we'll give you $1,000.
You'll get an Inside the Village mug.
Yeah. But it's all a scam. It's all a crypto site.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of crypto, I just read Durham Regional Police earlier this week.
King, yeah.
The Crypto King, 25 years old, $41 million.
Did you see the picture of him on his private? He's on a private jet. He's 25.
25.
I mean, they're totally legit.
Okay, we're out of here. The email, if you do get this far, itv@villagemedia.ca. All kidding aside, we'd love to hear from you. Watch each and every episode wherever you get your favorite podcasts or across the Village Media Network and at insidethevillage.ca. For Derek Turner, executive producer of the program, Michael Friscolanti, editor-in-chief here at Village Media, I'm Scott Sexsmith. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend.
You've been listening to Inside the Village.
Frisco and Scott's Wardrobe, provided in part by Moores, Sault Ste. Marie.